to a lab in California, get it analyzed. I get the nutritional facts. I'd be a little bit off. I'd do it again, and then again, and then again, and then finally, I had the perfect formula that had the right ratio of sodium, potassium, and sugar, and it tasted amazing. And I created three flavors with the same base for efficiency. So each flavor had the same base. Only difference was two-ounce fruit concentrates, organic fruit concentrates, just for the flavor difference. So they tasted slightly different, had very similar health benefits, and same ingredients. So it was perfect. And to pasteurize it, I learned to flash pasteurize it. I would heat the formula to 184 degrees, and then I would have to immediately pour it in the bottle, seal the cap, and throw it in a tub of ice. And that was my flash pasteurization to make it somewhat stable. So I'd take these samples, and I would, at this time, I have to backtrack on the investor side, but at this time I'd bring it to the investor that I had and present it, and everyone loved the way it tasted, and so things began to progress. But at this time I had the nutritional guy, I had another nutritional guy who was great, my business partner overseas, the attorney, and he didn't like the team that I had. He wanted me to get rid of nearly everyone. He didn't think that they really had a part. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't just drop everybody who had been there for me after all the obstacles. And so we had some obstacles with that. And I ended up taking a business trip to New York to meet the manufacturer that he set me up with. And that was an interesting trip. And so we were all set. And what am I missing? Oh yeah, so slightly prior to this, I was working at this hotel resort, and then I would cross the street and I'd work in the Bell Harbor Shops, which is the most expensive mall in America in the world per square foot. So you have celebrities and all kinds of businessmen, and so I would try to meet any business person that I could to get advice from, or to email, or meet for coffee just to learn from. And so I also met this Turkish businessman there who, he was a character. I met him for coffee a couple times, and he actually gave me a lot of insight, and he was going to invest, but not directly. He wanted to get us funding through a bank, so we would have the liability. So we said no to that. But it was such a difficult time because I was working at this restaurant in the Bell Harbor Shops, devil after devil after devil, working all the time, trying to work on the business stuff and trying to go to school. And so I ended up dropping out of school to focus on the business venture. And I still didn't have a lot of time. So I was working, I'd get there at 10 a.m. I would work all the way through nonstop. It was the busiest restaurant. It was like fast food for rich people, casual fine dining. So we'd get 5 tables at once. They'd all want a bottle of wine. Half of them wouldn't even speak English. And then I'd be paired with a busser who didn't speak English from Cuba. So I had to learn a little bit of Spanish, and it was challenging. I'd run to the restrooms when I could and send an email, business email, or make a quick phone call to a manufacturer, making sure that the sample was going to arrive. It was funny. I remember one time I was on my way to work, and I did not have time. I literally did not have time. I had to change at a stoplight. So I remember the light turned red. I was like, I have to literally change my pants at the stoplight. And so I get out and I look to my right, and there's a van full of tourists right next to me. And so I'm like, all right, I gotta do this. So I just started changing, and I knew I had maybe 30 seconds. It was a long light. And as I'm changing, they started pointing and laughing, and it was pretty funny. So I remember I looked over and I was like, I don't have time. And so I continued changing, and I didn't completely get to change. I just got my pants on and the light turned green. So I jumped in and had to do the rest at another stoplight. But yeah, life was crazy. It was literally minute to minute in Miami for me in this stage, minute to minute. And so I remember I was working both jobs, and then I quit the hotel job, to just work at the restaurant job, double after double. And then I quit that job for a better opportunity to work on First Street on South Beach to make more money in less hours. And that was a very challenging experience. That place was very serious. But then I quit that place because on the other side with my investor, we had a deal to have me arrive in New York City for our first production in April. So I quit my job, packed everything in my car, drove to Sarasota to say bye to my family and friends, and then I was going to retain 51% of my company. He was going to put in $100,000 for first couple of productions, which wasn't a lot of money, but at the time I thought it was sufficient. And I was going to drive to New York City for first production, and that's as far as I got. He never wanted to sign any paperwork prior to that, but I was just too excited to really take it as a red flag. So I'm in Sarasota spending time with my family, and I was supposed to leave in a couple days, and then I get a text for me to call the investor. So I call him, and he said he changed his mind. He didn't feel comfortable, and he wanted 51% of the company, and was only going to put in $20,000 for one production to see how it would go and kind of feel it out. And then he said that he would pay me a salary of $500 a week in New York City. That's homeless status. So I would be essentially a slave, not even working for myself anymore. And he expected me to work somewhere else on the weekends to fund living in New York City. So I said no. And then he had a counter offer. I said no to that. He had another offer. I said no to that. And things didn't end the best, but I just couldn't accept those offers. So ultimately, the business venture got put on the side because my manufacturer was also through him, so that was put on the side. And there were just a series of challenges ahead. And I was currently $7,000 in debt and had no money saved. So I could have continued to pursue it, but I just wanted to put it on the side to build more of a foundation myself before continuing that. So there I was, 2-3 years later, age 25. I was grateful that my brother invited me to live with him. I was staying with my family for a little bit, and then I ended up on this big brown leather couch in my brother's living room with a huge pothole in it. It was comfortable, but you had to lay the right way. So that became my home for 2 months until his roommates moved out and I could pick a room. So that was a time of a lot of self-examination and discovery. And I got a job. He got me a job at a restaurant working part-time. So I had plenty of time to think things over, which was a blessing, because I ended up coming up with 4 more main business ventures to launch in the future. And then I started realizing that I had a passion for fitness and an athletic role, and also speaking and helping people through that. But I didn't know how to put it together. So I would refine things. And eventually I learned that I could put it all together sort of like a little empire under 3 roles, where I could have a drug-free athletic role and be an athlete and push a business venture that way and really enjoy myself in the process. And then I could have a speaking role where I can share what I've learned that way, any books, any messages I want to get across that way, and get into that. And then also an entrepreneurial role with all of the main ventures. So it was a nice way to just organize everything and quantify the progress. So things were good, but then I realized I needed more income to help me speed things up. So I had an opportunity to work for a financial institution. They liked my business backgrounds, and they gave me a couple interviews, a personality test where I learned that I was an architect. That was pretty cool. They warned me that I'd have a desire to recreate their system, but according to the personality tests, I should have been very successful in that industry. So they were excited to have me on board, and I was excited to be on board. And I was really fortunate to have a good friend of mine who was a few years older than me as a mentor, um, who currently is a very successful financial advisor who I look up to. So he was my mentor, things were great, but they were right. I could not follow their system and just do it. I constantly had the need to recreate their system, tweak it here and there, try to make it a little more efficient. I couldn't do it. My mind, I wanted to create. So it really reinforced my passion for creating and going my own path. So I quit there and I focused entirely on my business stuff while continuing in the restaurant industry because it yielded the most money in the least amount of time. And I had a pretty good resume in the industry, so it was easy to get jobs. But I did learn a lot from that financial institution. I learned so much about networking and cold calling and approaching people in the street, setting appointments, really getting people to let their guard down and talking about their number one most hated subject, finances. It's the number one subject that people get most guarded about. So I thought it was fascinating how my mentor would get strangers to open up about their finances, literally how much money they had in the bank. It was amazing. I learned a lot from him, a lot from the industry, but I also learned it wasn't for me. So I continued on and began working at another hotel resort, a prestigious one that has a renowned training that they put you through. So I was grateful for that because it not only looked good on a resume, but which enabled me to get future jobs when needed, but it also was really fascinating to see how the infrastructure, the hierarchy, how things worked within this worldwide hotel resort. So I learned a lot and met a lot of great people within that. And that's where I will leave off of this part. The end of part one.